Good morning, everyone, and warm welcome to all for today's webinar on ESG Made Simple from Basics to Global Compliance. Today's webinar is designed to break ESG down into simple and practical terms. We'll begin with basics, as in what ESG really means and why it matters,
Lost your
especially in
voice.
today's webinar. We'll begin with basics, as in what ESG really means and why it matters, especially when it comes to today's business environment. So before we dive in, let me quickly introduce myself and Quality Austria Central Asia. I am Saurabh Kurtarkar and I'm managing training operations at Quality Austria Central Asia. At QACA, we have been working in the field of quality and compliance for a little over 15 years now. And over these years, we have grown steadily. And today we have a team of around 3,200 professionals, which including more than 3,000 engineers and technical experts. We support around 2,100 clients across India, and with around 26 offices, we are able to work closely with organizations of all size, from smaller companies to large multinationals. Our work covers full range of quality and compliance services like certification, inspection, project management and engineering, testing, cybersecurity, training, and sustainability. We are accredited nationally and internationally with multiple standards, which include ISO 17020, which sets out the criteria of competence for various types of inspection bodies. 17021 is for the bodies that provide auditing and certification. 17024 is for the bodies that certify people, and ISO 17025 for testing and calibration laboratories. And all this is under NABCB and QCI, which basically means our processes are recognized and trusted globally. We have some specialized technical capabilities as well, like material testing, pool testing, and cyber labs, which not many organizations have under one roof. And when it comes to industries, we work across sectors such as telecom, automotive, built environment, manufacturing, food and retail, and petrochemical and coal. So before we proceed, just quick housekeeping points for all of you to note. This session will run for around 2 hours, including Q&A session. Now it's absolutely my pleasure to introduce today's two speakers who would bring a lot of practical experience and clarity today on this topic. Firstly, I would like to introduce Anil Murjani sir, Executive Director at Quality Austria. He's a mechanical engineer with over 33 years of experience across design, manufacturing, management systems, and operations with top multinational companies. As a co-founder at QACA and a sustainability expert, he has been helping organizations understand and implement global requirements like ISO 14064 and EcoVadis in a very practical way. Those who have attended his sessions before would know how effectively he simplifies complex concepts, which is why we are thrilled to have him kick off today's discussion. Further, I would like to introduce Hardeep sir, Hardeep Grewal, Chief Sustainability Officer at QACA. Hardeep sir has a strong technical background, and he's a postgraduate from IIT Kharagpur and has worked across both grassroots projects and policy initiatives. He has a deep experience in areas like renewable energy, climate action, and sustainability planning. What truly stands out in his ability is to connect policy with real on-ground challenges, helping him organize, understand sustainability in a simple, practical, and relatable way. So today, together, both of them will help us navigate ESG from basics all the way to the global compliance expectations. So with that, let's begin. And I would like to invite our first speaker, Anil Murjani, sir. Sir, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Good to have you here, and we hope we have a very good interactive session. The more the questions, the better it is for all of us. I think the more questions are there, I think we get more knowledgeable because we can collectively find an answer and solution. There are two of us, and we'll walk you through. We'll try to make things as simple as possible, as plain as possible, so that when you finish with this webinar, at least you should be clear what the whole thing is all about. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have moved much ahead in this activity, so their knowledge is already good. So maybe I request them to contribute in whichever way they can during this entire session. So this session is what we will cover is about ESG. What is ESG? Why do you want to do it? What are some examples? And what are the frameworks, under the big ESG bubble or the umbrella? What all are constituting as a component so that the whole thing can then be called as ESG? So it could be ISO standards, it could be the BRSR, EcoVadis and all, whatever is all there. We'll just walk you through that and make it as simple as possible for you to understand. That's what we will do. So can we move to the next slide? So what is ESG? Now, just to let you know, the sustainability, maybe you want to click here, click both here, then I'll just stick there for some time. Now, sustainability, basically, it is a practice of meeting, present needs, what we need now, without, actually compromising on the ability of the future generations to meet their needs later. So we have a set of needs which we have now, and what we want to see for the future generations, their needs, which could be something else. And we want to, kind of make sure that it is sustainable. It is manageable in the long run, long term. So this balances the economic, social, environmental concerns in the long-term viability. And this sustainability would also involve using up our resources. Resources are all across on the earth. So we are trying to responsibly use our resources, protect the environment, and at the same time, we manage social equity and economic growth. Now, this is what is actually means sustainability. So the keywords is long term, use our resources economically, responsibly, protect the environment, and meeting our present needs so that our future needs are also balanced. So this is what, in short, sustainability actually means. I hope this is what you understand. Now, ESG is actually a set of measurable, criteria. There are these measures put together. And ESG is actually taken up by an entity, by a company. So you have to implement ESG. And naturally, as you all know, it's about environmental, social, and governance. And it is now, kind of embedded into your business, into your investments. It's a tool for measuring. Apart from the business parameters, it is also a tool for measuring the environmental, the social, the governance parameters. So it's kind of a tool, like you have many other tools to work on. To ESG is one of those tools. Just go to the next slide. I can probably explain it even more. Now, I'm sure you can simply read this slide, but just to tell you in the background that, this originated, from a thing called CSR. CSR was corporate social responsibility. And this originated way back in 1950. And it was only in 2004 when the United Nations, they created this word called ESG. So they created this word with a kind of a jargon which says that who cares wins. So whoever cares, maybe will win. That is what the whole concept was. And then since it was in 2004, then they came up with some principles for responsible investment. The companies needs to invest, but it has to be responsible in terms of resource conservation. So in 2006, some of those things started coming in, and then with 11, and then eventually in 2015, what happened was United Nations came up with 17 sustainable development goals. In short, these are called SDGs. You can Google it up, you'll find it. So there are these 17 sustainable goals which are there, and that is one of the framework through which ESG is now embedded. So that's how it actually works. Type in your questions if you have. Sort of next. Now, why would an company go for ESG? Why would you do it in the first place? So now these days, with things changing and becoming so dynamic, people want to manage their risks, and environmental damages is also a big risk for many companies, many countries. So the risk and the opportunity with respect to ESG, example, climate change. Everybody is seeing, you've got many examples on climate change. So the risk and opportunity people want to now manage. So ESG comes in. If any company wants to have a new investor, new stakeholder, then those investors and those stakeholders, they want to see what is your ESG performance, what is your ESG reporting. They want to see how much are you investing. Are you an ESG compliant organization? Then there is also this brand value which carries along with the organization. Then regulatory compliance. And since, as I said, sustainability is something with present needs and the future needs. So long-term performance of the organization on these practices is something which is quite there, quite stable, and must to do. And the last thing is operational efficiency. When I say operational efficiency, it could be consumption of energy, consumption of oil, consumption of coolant, consumption of lubricant, consumption of whatever. So the operational efficiency with respect to the resources is something which is most important, and any company or every company wants that. They want to do cost saving. They want a return on investment. So this is where ESG also plays a good role on this activity. So that is why it is said, why ESG? Now come down, please. You stopped here, but maybe I went. Go down, please. Yes. So no, sorry. I want to stick here. Yeah. So the return on investment. So the return on investment from ESG is that the organizational values are aligned. Your values with respect to social values, ethical values, climate change, fair labor practices, policies, ethical conduct. Now, these are all the values which an organization has. So ESG covers this. That's the return on investment. Plus, there is this long-term resilience and risk mitigation. Example, you don't have controversies, you don't have legal issues, you don't have reputational damages. So this is something long-term which you want to eliminate and sustain over a long term. Plus, competitive returns can also happen because ESG, if you take the data of, say, if you limit yourself, example for India, then Nifty 100 ESG, the top 100 Nifty ESG certified companies in India which have implemented ESG, they have a high competitive return including energy savings and investments. Plus, naturally, your growth to global market, your access to global market, to reach to that global market also increases a lot. So the ROI on ESG is something which is long term. It's not a short term. It's a long term, and it is there, and there's a lot of data which can show you that it really works. Next. So there are these, things are so dynamic these days, with information, with data, with requirements, everything is changing. So even the requirements in ESG is changing. Each country is adapting their own set of reporting lines, their own set of transition deadlines. Transition deadlines in the sense when to report, what is the deadline. So all of these are things are happening, and ESG is something which kind of also helps you to meet those deadlines, those transitions, and improves the stakeholder confidence. Next. Now, I think there are two slides to this. When I look at the geographic growth, now there are, from what my past experience says, there are 25 companies, 25 countries in the world who have mandated that if you want to do business with those 25 countries, ESG compliance, ESG reporting is a mandatory thing. And these days, when we are having a global economy and then it is open, and the policy of the world is China plus one, so China plus India. So India will also, there are many companies who are already doing a lot of exports and reaching out to many countries. However, every other country who is not, every other organization who has not been able to do that also has an opportunity to do that. Unless and until you work on the global standards, global practices, only then our organizations, our companies, people like you and me who are working for organizations or who are trying to implement will only grow. So this is that tool which you can use in your organization, show compliance, plus you are a responsible citizen. And if you're living in Delhi NCR, then you know what we are talking about in terms of environmental pollution. Then these are some small steps which are going to help us collectively move ahead. Now, some of the countries who are absolutely, 100% there on ESG or doing business with companies who have ESG are something like Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Switzerland, even UK, Canada, France, even Asian countries where you are trying to work with, like Japan, Singapore, South Korea, they are also now asking for ESG compliance. Even the Middle East companies, for example, UAE, Saudi Arabia, they have made ESG as a part of the mandatory reporting while doing business. So when we are talking about the geographic growth, the reach or the growth, then all of these countries are mandating the ESG. Next one, please. Now, when you look at market differentiation, naturally, now when you are having a company who is implementing ESG, so you're saving on energy, you're saving on cost, you are more competitive, you have good labor policies, etc., etc. So you have all of these things in place. Imagine that. So you are going to attract more investors. You will attract, or you will have more appeal with your customer. I'm sure you're going to gain competitive edge. Your supply chain leverages will be much better, and new business models and new innovations will also eventually overall drive the innovation within the organization. You have more people who want to work in your organization because the talent acquisition for you and retention of the talent becomes better. So there are some, certain very good features which differentiates from an ESG compliant company to someone else. So maybe I think maybe you want to look at it from that angle as well. Next. So this is where I think Hardeep can take over.
So let me scare you a bit before I get into the nitty-gritty of the whole thing, and I'm just showing you a link from a website which sort of measures this as Anil was talking of, in 2015 governments met in Paris and they decided that they want to restrict global warming to 1.5 degrees above the temperatures that were there when the Industrial Revolution began, say about 250 years back or 270, 80 years back. And so they decided how much carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide equivalents are we permitted to push into the atmosphere, and we are still safe. So that limit that was decided on is going to run out in 3 years, as this clock shows. And it's a simulation, but it's pretty close to what's happening. If you were to look at a 2-degree scenario that you were willing to take temperatures across to 2 degrees above the pre-industrial levels, then this is the time you have. I'll get into more detail what this means when we talk about it.
But maybe I can also explain if you want.
Please. Yes, please do.
You know, we were doing a course on 14064, and then we were shown this slide, and this is actually a live date. So, for example, if you see on the left is 2 degrees centigrade scenario. So that means that if the temperature of the Earth were to increase by 2 degrees, only 2 degrees, just pay a little attention, then we have only, if you look at the right in the bottom, it says CO2 budget left, tons. So CO2 is actually it's harmful. So we have only 903, 901, whatever the figure is changing, tons of CO2 left to be consumed if the 2-degree scenario is actually reached. And in that situation, we have only 21 years left of CO2 to be consumed. So if we are in 2025, then this calculation, this scientific calculation assumes, based on the consumption of CO2 and the data, that if it is a 2-degree scenario, then our Earth will exhaust all the CO2 by 21 years, in 21 years from now, which is say 46 or something. And if you put a link on 1.5 degree, just click that. So if it were to increase only 1.5 degree, so no, that is not 2 degrees, then we don't have much time left. We have only 3 years and 7 months when the CO2 emissions will cross a level where it will be completely unimaginable, unlivable, or it will be very difficult. And the climate change patterns are going to be as drastic or even more drastic as we've seen it in the past. So there is 2 scenarios, 1.5 degree and 2 degree scenario.
I'll be speaking about all the 3 aspects of ESG, that is the environment, the social, and the governance. But in the limited time that we have, I'll just pick and choose. I'll do a bit of cherry picking, and I'll talk somewhat in detail about climate change and maybe less about other environmental impacts. So a common thing is that people sort of club everything together, stretching from journalists to educated people, and they tend to mix up what is climate change, and they sort of ascribe almost everything to climate change, which is scientifically incorrect. So daily weather, if it rains in Delhi today and it doesn't rain tomorrow, that definitely is not climate change. It's just something that is weather. Weather is something that fluctuates within a broad limit, which is the climate. Or in other words, if Delhi were to continuously start having snow, and that snow is recorded not just for 1 year, but it's recorded for many years down the road, and you reach a conclusion based on averages across decades that it snows during the winter in Delhi, then we would be qualified to say that the climate of Delhi has changed from a tropical climate to a temperate climate. Otherwise, any fluctuation in weather, whether you have a severe winter or you have a milder winter, does not mean that this is climate change. Although it can be linked in certain ways to an effect of climate change, but it's not climate change that way. So since there's a lot of talk, and there are people, educated people once again, who brush it aside and say that this is just a hoax, and we should not believe it. And these educated people can even be prime ministers and presidents of certain countries who say that climate change is a lie. So who should we believe? Believe the politician that says that climate change is a lie, or believe somebody else? So if I were to go, I would go by the experts. The most credible body of experts in the world is the IPCC, which came into existence in 1988, and it has about 3,000 of the foremost climate scientists in the world. What they have said through 6 assessments that they have done so far is that climate change is something that is real. It is a result of modern production processes, and they choose to call it man-made climate change, or to use a more difficult word, anthropogenic climate change. So I am citing the IPCC here, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, because it's a worldwide body made up of almost all countries in the world who send their representatives who know what they're talking about. It's these scientists, these 3,000 foremost scientists in the world who are telling us that the climate is changing. And what we were seeing earlier on is that the Earth is heating up. I'm showing you this graph, and this graph is for the last 2,000 years. Say at the point at which we start counting the years in AD, or the point at which Jesus Christ was said to be born. There are 2 plots here. If you look at the global temperature plot, which is in blue at the bottom, you will see that it is almost steady for about 1,700 years, and then it starts climbing up and temperatures rise to a level where by 2024 they were 1.3 degrees above the earlier average. And that cutoff point is where your industrial revolution begins. I've put a vertical marker over there which says the invention of the steam engine. Almost in sync with this is the graph on top, which talks of increasing carbon dioxide levels after the invention of the steam engine, and it has almost doubled. It is probably doubled from 270 level to where we are today, where we are around 430 parts per million in the atmosphere. So this is atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, the concentration of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a gas that helps heat up the atmosphere. It's called a greenhouse gas. There are other gases also, but among the greenhouse gases that populate the atmosphere, carbon dioxide is about 2/3 of what is responsible for the warming that is happening. And also it is a gas that takes a very long time to, a carbon dioxide molecule, once it comes into existence, it takes about 100 years to disintegrate and become something else on an average. So carbon dioxide is taken as the benchmark for doing all kinds of computations related to greenhouse gas emissions. If you were to look at this, this is what we are walking into when we enter the next century. The things that are in red, this is the Indian subcontinent, with India very centrally placed in the whole thing. The red portions are portions which will become unlivable because of seawater intrusion. Because of the global warming, two things are going to happen. Liquids expand when they heat up. So the volume of the seawater is going to become more because of the pickup in the climate system, the warming in the climate system. The other thing is that a lot of land ice that exists in the Himalayas, in the glaciers in Greenland, in Antarctica, a lot of this land ice is going to melt and become a part of the seawater. So because of these two main things, sea levels are going to rise. Sea levels will not rise even in the next century to the level in which these places are marked in red, but they will become unlivable because of the intrusion of the sea water, because of the increased salinity of the land. So it shows a very grim picture where you have, say, about 1/3 or say probably more than that, half of Bangladesh, because it's a low-lying country, becoming unlivable. You have coastal parts of India, of Sri Lanka, Andaman, the Maldives, and even portions of Pakistan, in this, including Karachi, in this map, Bombay, where these places will not be livable in the next century if things keep on going the way they are. Till date, despite the efforts of the IPCC and despite interest in the subject that we're talking about, the outcome so far has not indicated a global positive. By that, what I mean is that in certain places, you have had good results. The Chinese have been successful in cleaning up the air around Peking and Shanghai, and they live in a better situation than what we do in Delhi. There are other pockets in the world where something meaningful has resulted. A lot of Scandinavian countries are, and even Spain is running today on electricity that is not generated from fossil fuels. Many of those things are happening, but at a global level, we are still into the downslide. We are nowhere near controlling what is happening, what bad is happening to the atmosphere or to the Earth system, and that's where we are stuck. So we are probably sailing into this grim picture that I'm showing you on the screen right now. Now, why is that happening? I will not trouble you with a lot of information over here, but just this is take a easy look at it. The atmosphere has certain amount of carbon in it, in the form of, as I said, 2/3 of it that is responsible for global warming is the carbon dioxide that's already there in the atmosphere. You have things like methane, chlorofluorocarbons, and all other kinds of greenhouse gases. So the total of that adds up to somewhere around, these are approximate figures, somewhere around 750 gigatons of carbon in the atmosphere. We have about 2,000 gigatons of carbon buried in the land. That can be me sitting and talking to you, I'm made up of carbon, and you listening to me are made up of carbon again. We have plants that are made up of carbon. We eat carbon when we eat anything that we eat. We let out carbon when we breathe out. We take in a small amount of carbon dioxide also when we breathe in. So there's an exchange, and there's a lot of carbon buried in the earth in form of coal, in form of oil, in form of natural gas, and all other kinds of things that's buried inside the. So there are 2,000 gigatons of carbon over there. So annually an exchange takes place between the atmosphere and the land biosphere. So about 100 gigatons of carbon is sucked in by the land's biosphere, primarily because of photosynthetic activity that plants do. Plants consume carbon dioxide, convert it into stuff that you, me, and animals eat. And there's an equal amount of exchange that's happening from the biosphere back to the atmosphere because of all the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that are being created. The same kind of phenomena happens between the ocean. The ocean here is divided into two parts, but roughly this exchange keeps on happening, and there appears to be perfect balance in nature. So why is there a heating up? It's because of this. Every year, we are pumping in about 10 gigatons of carbon into the atmosphere because of all the oil, the gas, and the coal that we burn. Fortunately, the Earth system, despite being stressed, removes a good portion of this 10 gigatons of carbon that we are chucking into the atmosphere. But it is adding up, and because it's adding up, you have this graph of carbon dioxide shooting up and raising global temperatures, and consequently the Earth becoming unlivable because of that. Can we live without fossil fuels? That's the prime question that is there before everybody, because if we cannot live without fossil fuels, then there is no solution to it. But the good answer is that technologically, yes. Let's do a small thought experiment and just think of the sun, which is on your left. This picture is not representative because the distances between the sun and the planets on the right would be so big that they just cannot fit into my screen. And but it's just illustrative in the sense that the sun is huge compared to any of the planets that are there. The curvatures sort of suggest the huge difference between the size of the sun and the planets that revolve around it. More into that. This is the volume of energy that the sun generates. It's a middle-sized star. It's not a huge star. It's not a giant star. It's just a middle-sized star. This is the volume of the energy that the sun generates. 1 terawatt is 10 to the power 12 trillion, a trillion watts. The Earth just receives a very, very small portion of the energy that the sun generates because it is at a huge distance from the sun, and compared to the sun, it's very small. It's very small. So of all the energy that the Earth receives, scientists have estimated how much energy we are actually consuming as of now. So that is it. We are not even consuming a very small portion of the entire energy that the sun is sending to the Earth. This 15 terawatts of energy consumption includes everything. The energy that is being expended for this webinar and the energy that is being expended in the war in Ukraine, and the energy that human beings are using to move cargo across the oceans or generate food, anything, lighting up homes, air conditioning, whatever. All put together, it's just 15 terawatts. So if we can somehow tap the energy that falls from the sun on the Earth, we are in a good place to get rid of our dependence on fossil fuels. Let's just dive in. Where does technology position us today? Technologically speaking, it's completely doable. I'll just show you a graph and then that will throw more light into this whole thing. This is a graph of just the prices of solar panels. So the black thing that's falling across the years for the last 20 years, for 2 decades, is the price drop in the prices of solar panels that are commonly used to tap solar energy. The bars on the in yellow are the bars that show the energy that is being generated through photovoltaic panels. So technologically speaking, we are quite well positioned to actually do this thing. About a decade and a half back, certain people at MIT in Boston did another kind of a study. They started calculating that if we want to meet the energy requirements of the Earth and we focus on setting up solar panels in areas where human beings don't live, let's say we do it in the deserts, of the world. And they assumed a very low efficiency for the solar panels that they would do, because they said it's not feasible to maintain solar panels in deserts in a good way. So let's assume that only 2% of the energy that falls on a solar panel gets converted into electricity. So how much area of the deserts of the world would they need to do that? The answer that they got was less than 10%. So it's doable at that level, that if you think in terms of setting up solar panels in deserts, you can generate all the electricity and meet all the energy requirements of the world by just putting up third grade solar panels in 10%, less than 10% of the desert area of the world. Other people tried making an estimate of the energy requirements of India that could be met by putting up solar panels on rooftops. And the answer that they got was that if we cover only 40% of all rooftops in the country with solar panels, we will be meeting our current energy requirements, and also for the remaining part of this decade. So it's technologically possible to get rid of our dependence on fossil fuels. This is a statement from the International Energy Agency, and what they are saying is that today, if you want to generate electricity, the cheapest route to that is to opt for solar panels and not opt for thermal energy, not opt for atomic energy, not even opt for hydroelectric or wind. Today, solar photovoltaics are the cheapest source of electricity in human history ever. I'm just listing a few other things. This is just a diagram of how wave energy in the ocean can be used to meet our energy requirements. There is tidal energy from the oceans. Wind energy. I and you as a kid used to do this thing. We used to use the energy of the wind and have a good time. But you have towers that have a fan on top of them and a turbine below, and they're generating electricity, and they do a good job. You have hydroelectric power, you have biomass energy, you have hydrogen cells, you have geothermal energy. So there are multiple solutions to the problem. I went into it in a bit more detail, in the sense that this is about climate change. This is about finding a way to meet the energy requirements of the world and get on with our responsibility. E obviously is not limited to climate change and global warming. There's a lot more to E, and these are some of the things that I would want to stress upon. That is that for a country like India, waste management is one of the main things that we need to deal with, because the whole country is gradually turning into a big garbage bin. Anywhere you go, you have these huge piles of garbage in almost any city. Delhi has 3 huge piles of garbage all around it. Anywhere we go in India, we have these garbage dumps. The whole place is gradually becoming filthy and filthier by the day. A lot of energy can be derived from it. As of now, it's a source of intense pollution, depletion of resources, and a lot of bad things are happening because of the waste that we are piling up. We're not putting it to good use. Water is again a critical thing, and for a country like India, we do have extreme water scarcity. We live in one of the most water-stressed regions in the world, and there are better ways of handling water. So talking of the air, talking of the water, and talking of the biodiversity on the ecosystem, on the surface of the earth, there are everything put together makes up the E component of the ESG thing that companies are expected to take care of. The S deals with certain other things. It primarily deals with 4 kinds of relations that a company has. The first relation is the relationship that a company has with its employees. The other is the relationship that a company has with its suppliers. The third is the relationship that the company has with its customers. And the fourth would be categorized as other stakeholders, for example, the community in which the company is operating, the investors that are there, and other companies that are associated in partnerships with the company, and of course, the government. So social is where the social component is where you deal with things like human rights. This is a map of the world. You and I can have disagreements with the portrayal over here, but I've just put it here just to get a broad idea of what the human rights situation in the world is. So for a specific country, I also have certain problems in agreeing at the scale in which things are plotted over here, but that's okay. This is just to give a rough idea of where we stand. Human rights is an important component of social, so it definitely talks of what a company does in terms of its human rights of the community in which it operates, and of the employees that are associated with it, and also the human rights of other partners that a company has. To illustrate, a company should not engage children in its work. It's generally defined that somebody who's less than 14 years of age is a child. A person who's between 14 years and 18 years of age is not a child anymore, but definitely not of an age where that person should be made to work regularly. So companies are expected not to hire children, and also not to hire people as between the age group 14 and 18 age group if it can be avoided. So child labor is a big no. 14 to 18 is an option which is permitted by law, but it's not definitely not encouraged. And even these young people should not be placed in made to work in any areas where there are hazardous substances that need to be handled. Organizations need to be careful how they go about hiring. So this would be one aspect of the S. Forced labor should not happen. Labor should be a choice and a free choice. There should not be any coercion involved in it. There should be a proper contract between the worker and the company, and the contract needs to be respected and honored properly. I sort of put it, we're running short of time, so I'll not just get into this. I'll move on. Freedom of association of people who work in a country, in a company, needs to be respected. Generally, companies are averse to union formation because they feel that it messes up the work that they want to do. But as citizens, workers who work in any company have the right to form unions. The Constitution of India gives them that right, and so do constitutions all over the world. And the International Labour Organization, which has been constituted by governments coming together, says the same thing. Not only do people have the right as workers to form a union, they should also be given certain regular settlements. The union's voice needs to be respected. And even in situations where there is no union, the company needs to come forth and create certain committees where workers can express their grievances and help make the system better. For example, there should be a works committee, a safety committee, a canteen committee, and so on to make the whole thing work. So this is another component of S. We have been lately, as a society, disturbed by what has happened in relations, social relations, where there has been a lot of coercion and sexual exploitation going on, and governments across the world have come off with more stringent laws. POSH, prevention of this thing, has come into existence in our country, and it is something that we need to adhere to. As part of the S, health and safety of people working in an organization is something that needs to be taken care of. These are certain things that I'm showing on the screen that happen to be areas in which companies need to be concerned and they need to work. The last part of the ESG is the governance part of it. So just to take an example, we were hit by COVID a few years back. Some companies survived. Some companies survived by retrenching workers, asking people to leave because they could not take care of the workforce. Some companies did not survive at all. What sets one company apart from another? That one company does not survive at all, another survives by retrenching workforce, shrinking up itself, and another survives without asking a single worker to leave or without deducting pay in any way. The difference is the capability in which they're prepared to manage risk. So if you are a company that understands what risk is and you are organized, you're planned to manage risk, then you are handling your ESG in a good way, the G component of the ESG. The risks can be of multiple kinds. I've just put a list out here for the kind of risks. This is another concern. India has come up recently, started implementing a law on the protection of personal data that people give to companies and organizations. People are scared that their data is being put to bad use. And that is a very legitimate scare because suddenly one person wakes up in the morning and finds out that whatever money he had in the bank is not there anymore. He's been swindled. So data needs to be protected. And the responsibility of protecting the data lies on the company which has asked for the data. So there has to be a way to protect that data. The list out here is about certain things that companies are expected to do in order to protect data. I was talking of business continuity and resilience, and we do have many kinds of disruptions that keep on happening. They can be man-made, they can be social, there can be a war going on, there can be other kinds of stresses. Organizations need to be lean, flexible, smart. They should be capable of resuming business. As part of the governance, a company is expected to not only be smart in ESG itself, it is also expected to pass on that smartness to all people associated in its supply chain. So it is expected to educate its supply chain of the advantages of doing good ESG. It is understandable that in the beginning, all suppliers will not cooperate because they feel it's an unnecessary burden that's coming their way. But if a company is firm in its own understanding and about implementing ESG, then it can have its way for the good of the world, including itself and including the supplier. This definitely involves a lot of education, capacity building, training, but this is something doable. And what needs to be appreciated is that in our country, a lot of big organizations are asking their suppliers to do good ESG and they're handholding them in the activity. How can we do these things? There has to be a system. So before I just pass it on to my colleague, Mr. Anil Mojwani, I'm just sharing one thing. And that is that knowing what needs to be done is fine. But then you also need to have a system to do it. So when we talk of global or national frameworks or standards, the standard or the framework or the method, whatever it is something where science gets translated into how to do the action, how to do the activity. You want to do something, and that is that you want to handle your ESG footprint in the world in a good way. It's always wise to choose a framework rather than do it in an ad hoc manner. Why? Because frameworks are based on experience of doing certain things in a certain way, and then you eventually find that opting for a framework helps you do that thing in a more cost-effective way, using less time, and also doing it in a better way, so you achieve better metrics for whatever you're doing. So if it comes down to energy saving, it's good to study a framework and understand what you can do using that framework, and then go that road instead of trying to invent the wheel again and again. So everybody doing ESG without looking at work that others have done and frameworks that have been evolved is not a good way of approaching the whole thing. So better way is to approach it through frameworks. We will be going into frameworks over here. And may I request my colleague, Mr. Murjani, to take over and just walk us through some of the frameworks.
Yeah. Sahas, we'll come to the Q&A just after this small remaining portion of mine. Okay. We saw your message. Now, there is so much of talk about ESG and all that, but for question, if I were you on your side, I think someone should ask what is the starting point on ESG? Where do you start from? What do you pick it up? So this should be some of the questions which you should start asking. But anyway, there are no direct standards which are directly related to ESG. A lot of them are indirectly related, and 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 would add up to a lot of your roadmap, which kind of culminates on the ESG. Now, some of the standards which are already there, which a lot of companies have already implemented, is ISO 14001, which is environment. Many companies these days are going in for ISO 50001, which is energy management. A lot of companies have mandated all their plants to go for this standard, because this is direct cost saving or cost monitoring, direct. And 14064 is another standard where you are trying to look at carbon footprint. There is also 67 associated with it. So there's a series of 14064 or 44 or 40 or 67 or whatever. So there are the series of standards, which some are certifiable, some are guidance standards, where you need to implement them. Okay, so primarily, I think the starting point for any organization, because ESG is not a small thing, it's something big, it's long term. So as a starting point in the journey of ESG, you should start with 14,000, 50,000. And because in 50,000, you'll have a lot of your energy related data and information under control. And then once you do that, you keep going one by one. Now, on the social front, there are these standards which are quite popular, which is 45,001, SA 8000, human rights, and there are this great place to work, anti-bribery system, and things like that. There are a lot of these things which are there. Then you won't come on governance. Again, 37,001, 27, which is IT, 27701, and business continuity. So these are the various standards which are relevant for companies to be there. Not all standards are mandatory that you must be certified. In some, you can also show compliances, but something which is related directly to ESG is the energy. So energy is 50,001, where you will probably surely be need to show certification on that, most likely. So under the ISO world, there are these standards which you can look for and try learning a bit as much as you can on these standards so that you can start thinking or implementing it as you go ahead and take your time. Next slide. In India, I'm talking about where a lot of people are here in this webinar. Now in India, the government of India has mandated, as per SEBI, SEBI is the Security Exchange Bureau of India, they have mandated that the top 1,000 listed company under SEBI, they must report BRSR to the authorities. It's a mandate, but it is only for top 1,000 companies. I was told by Hardeep ji that this top 1,000 companies would be companies whose turnover is about 7,000 crores and upwards. So it's for those companies, they are at that high level bracket. Tata, Ambani's and all of those companies, big ones. Now, that also means that the question which should be thought is that, are you not under BRSR? That is the question. Maybe you look out for an answer, then we'll come back later. So what about companies who are at 200 crore, 250, 300, 500, 1,000? What is applicable for them? Now, that should be the question. Okay. Now, so for BRSR, there are these, the Indian entity is asking. Now, if you go to the next slide, can you go to the next slide? It tells us that's EcoVadis? No. Okay, go back, please. I'm so sorry. So in the BRSR, it's got 9 critical ESG attributes. As you see, it talks about scope 1 to scope 3, water, energy, waste, human rights, broad diversity, wage parity. All of these are components to BRSR. There is a huge checklist. It's a many pages checklist with 40 questions. And you have to answer all of those 140 questions, put in all your supporting documents or evidences against each one of them, and then create a kind of a folder and then submit it to the authorities. Now, this is required under the SEBI's format, SEBI's requirement, and everybody on the top 1,000 companies, they are filling it, they have to do it. It's a mandate. Naturally, because these big companies are all limited companies, they have investors, they have good financial backup and data. So all of this helps them to improve their brand image and the market capitalization, market positioning, everything falls in line for them. Okay. So this is what is applicable in India. Now, EcoVadis is something which is more global. So for EcoVadis, basically EcoVadis as an organization is a global provider of corporate sustainability ratings. And they do the evaluation for ESG. So you have to basically go register yourself in their portal and submit a lot of documents as per their checklist. And that checklist covers, things like 4 key pillars like environment, labor, human rights, ethics, and sustainability, procurement. And then this platform, it gives you a rating. It's in bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. It gives you that. And that rating or that certificate eventually, once when you get, after submitting them a whole lot of documents with evidences, that is what you kind of give to your customers, or you declare. So it's kind of a, it's also a score from 0 to 100, where you get all of these gold, silver, platinum, and all that, and it's valid for 12 months. And then again after 1 year, you have to give them fresh set of data, and again they do the evaluation, because once when you submit to them, their team, their expert team, they do all the evaluation of the data. If they have queries, they'll ask you, else they will eventually give it to you. So EcoVadis is something which is highly known, highly reputable, and highly recognized. So that's how EcoVadis works. And anybody, any one of you can go and get yourself, your organization registered and get it done there that way. Okay. Next one.
So can I take over, Anil?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So we'll just take up 3 more. One of them is the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. So Anil talked of BRSR. BRSR is actually designed the way on the GRI standards. So this the interesting thing about this Global Reporting Initiative is that it's not a certifying standard like many of the ISO standards that Anil was talking of. So and although despite not being a certifying standard, it is the standard that is in vogue. It is a standard that most companies in the world choose to use. Why? It's the most comprehensive standard that covers everything. If you look at the entire GRI standard, it's a huge 1,000-page document. What is the GRI? It's just an NGO operating out of Netherlands. And the only thing that it does is that it writes out the GRI standards, it refines them, it updates them, and it passes them on to the world. Thereon, it is left to people in the world how they want to approach GRI. One of the approaches is that there are 2 possible approaches. One of the approaches is that you be in accordance with GRI. And the other is that you report with reference to GRI. Just to explain that, let me give you a peek into something that is there as part of the standards. So there's a foundation which is called GRI 1, which is the foundational principles that you need to be accurate, you need to be balanced in what you're doing, you need to put things in a very transparent way, you need to enable comparability of information. There are 2 sets of disclosures. One is the general disclosures about the organization, and the other is the material topics in which an organization engages in. By that, say if there's a steel company, just take an example of a steel company. It's a company that makes steel from iron ore. It uses energy. It does something with that energy. So the material topics that would be associated with this thing would be about steel, about coal, or some other form of energy that's being used to melt the iron ore and purify it and make the steel. But this would be something very different from a company like Google, where a different kind of materiality is involved. Google does not mine iron ore, Google doesn't do this. So for a company like Google, a different set of material topics would apply within the GRI framework, and for a steel company like the the various plants that the Steel Authority of India has, it would be something different. So these material topics are things that need to get covered when you are approaching the GRI framework for all things that apply to you. Now, each of these material topics, if you pick up any material topic in the GRI framework, it'll have certain mandatory requirements. Say, if you're reporting on water, they'll ask you to mandatorily report on 6 things. So when you report on each of the 6 things in the manner that the GRI system asks you to do, you're doing the thing in accordance with GRI. If you're not at that level, you're not able to do all the 6 things and you're not able to do it in the way that the GRI system wants you to do them, then you can report with reference to. So in plain language, with reference to is for children, for beginners who start with the GRI system, and in accordance is people who are adept at the GRI system. That's what the GRI standards are. As I said, these are standards that do not give you any certificate. However, it is wise once you've done the work and you've reported in a GRI across the GRI, it's always good to have your thing verified by some third party so that you can make a more credible statement to the world, and you can also be sure about what you're saying for yourself. Okay. One of the more interesting things is CBAM. CBAM is something that the European Union is imposing for anything that gets imported into any of the European Union countries. What they say is that we in Europe have been careful about climate. We have forced companies to reduce the carbon content in anything that they produce. We have created a system in which we pollute less. So we need to help the world do that, and we need to help ourselves in the process. The problem is that a lot of these European companies which were asked to cut down on their carbon emissions, and it involved money, they shifted their production systems out of Europe into companies that permitted them to pollute the atmosphere. So what the European Union is saying today through CBAM is that it's okay. You bring in something that the same stuff, if it's a pen that's being made in Europe and you import something from another country, but there are more emissions associated with that pen. If you're importing it from a different country, then the difference between the European pen in terms of its emissions and the difference and the stuff that is being imported, that difference needs to be paid. So CBAM is a mechanism for implementing a price on the extra emission that is flowing into the European Union because of stuff that is being imported over there. It, till date, has been something that was voluntary, but 1st January 2026 onwards, it is going to be something that's going to become mandatory. By mandatory, it is meant that now, if anything is entering the European Union and happens to be a consignment which is of more than 50 tons, the importer in Europe will have to fill up a form and inform the respective government of how much embedded emissions that stuff has. And then the government will make a comparison between what's embedded in what is being imported and the same stuff if it's produced in Europe, and whatever difference between the carbon content of the embedded, the imported stuff and the domestic stuff, that difference has to be paid in terms of carbon credits. So this whole scheme is there for that, so as to ensure that there is parity between producers in Europe and importers, and no emission goes unpaid for. So even if you're now manufacturing stuff in India or China or Nigeria, or wherever, as far as Europe is concerned, Europe is going to be out of bounds in this way that you cannot keep on throwing stuff into Europe anymore without making a declaration. So CBAM is something that needs to be mandatorily followed by all companies that are exporting stuff to Europe, whether those companies be in India or they be in South Africa. The Last method that I would want to talk about is life cycle assessment, because this is something quite different from what we've talked about so far. So life cycle assessment applies to a particular product. If I'm using a computer to talk to you, this computer has been produced. So we could do a life cycle assessment in terms of the environmental impact of this computer, not just the carbon associated with this, but even the water use associated in producing this computer, the amount of pollution that it has caused in the air during its course of its production, and not just its production, right from the day the stuff that becomes a part of this computer was mined till to its transportation to the place where this computer was manufactured, and beyond. Once it's manufactured, it leaves the gate of the factory to the place where it goes, where all these things. So this, if you are doing an assessment of the life cycle of something and talking of all kinds of environmental impacts that thing has, then you're doing a life cycle assessment, which are called cradle to gate or cradle to grave assessments. This is something that is picking up across the world because it's a very thorough analysis of the impact of the production and use and disposal of a product. Let me just, before we're severely short of time, so let me just talk about a few things. The top management needs to be involved in ESG. If it is not involved in ESG, nothing credible about ESG is going to happen in the company. If the top management is not involved, this work just will get delegated to people who do not have the clout in the company to get it implemented. This has been experienced. The top management should be involved in the 4 things that I list over here. That is, they should be very clear why we are opting for an ESG exercise. The second thing is that they also need to be clear in terms of the business objectives that will be achieved in the short term and also in the medium and long term through this exercise, and that information needs to be promoted in the company for people to understand, because it's something new and a lot of people working in a company sort of treat it as extra work which they don't want to do. An internal team needs to be created to do it. There has to be a structure to it. If required, you may hire a consultant if you do not feel very confident about it and you feel that there is a need to train people and there's a need to set up a system. It's wise to go in for a consultant. The last thing that the top management needs to be clear about is that are they choosing the right framework for what they want to do? So this has to be a well thought out, informed decision. It's better to document it. That's the first and foremost practical thing that we would like to share with you. This is the next thing that you need to do. You should be doing a materiality assessment. This is a very common chart that people do. On one axis, you plot the importance to the stakeholders, and on one you plot the importance to the organizations. And whatever topics you find that you are able to populate the top right-hand corner and the box next to it on the left and the box below it are places where you need to start, because those are the most important things for the organization and for associated stakeholders. So a materiality assessment would be the starting point of any ESG exercise. This is a figure that broadly shows how the whole thing is divided into 3 parts. There's a planning stage, which we talked of. There will be an implementation and assessment stage. And once you've done all this, there has to be a way to report. Because if you're not reporting on your ESG, then there's not much point to it. You should be building up brand value by reporting on ESG, and you should be encouraging others to report on their thing by reporting on ESG. How can we as an organization support you? In many ways. First, we can indulge in hand-holding and identifying gaps and risks, helping you do a materiality assessment. We can help you choose an appropriate framework that fits into the requirements of your company among the many myriad things that we exist. And we've please keep in mind that we've talked of less things just to keep things to the point. Otherwise, there are many more frameworks and things to choose from. You need to implement the framework. That does require a certain amount of expertise and experience going into the process. You need to report it in a good way. You would like to get it verified and validated if somebody else has done the work or you've done the work and you've hired a consultant to do it. Then you may want a different body, and QACA happens to be a body that engages in these kinds of things. And of course, lastly, you may want workforce trainings to happen. Over to you, Anilji. And
yeah, so thank you so much, Hardeep sir and Anil sir, and thank you everyone for staying with us through the session. So before we move on to the most, everyone is excited to move to this Q&A session, but before that, I would quickly like to share a couple of services that we can start immediately, after today's session. So apart from that, as Hardeep sir said, we do offer many other ESG related services, but then these are the ones which we can take it as a next step, quick step for you. So first would be the ESG gap assessment. So this would be for the organizations that want to understand where they currently stand in terms of ESG. So we offer a structured ESG gap assessment for this. So what our team would do is they would review your current practices across ESG, that is environment, social and governance areas, and give you a clear picture of your strengths, gap and improvement priorities. So this would help you understand what exactly needs to be done, to meet the global requirements like we discussed, BRSR, GRI, EcoVadis, and other ESG expectations. So apart from that, another would be the trainings. We do offer multiple modules for this. One would be ESG awareness, implementation, and we have one upcoming training coming in December for ESG certified professional training, which is for 4 days, and we do have it a weekend batch. So as mentioned, the dates would be 13, 14 and 20, 21 December. So in case you wish to enroll, you can connect us for this. So both these offerings are designed to make your ESG journey easier. So whether you are just starting or looking to strengthen what you have already done, so this should definitely help you. So with that, we would now open the floor for question and answers. So just give me a moment. I'll just allow you guys to unmute so that there are already a few questions in Q&A tab, which will start with initially. So I'll just go to the first question from Praveen Singh.
Hardeep ji, where are you?
Yeah. So
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to start with, we have a first question from Mr. Praveen Singh. What is net zero emission and how it has been?
See, there's a problem with emissions, and that is that there is no way to actually come to a zero emission level because certain chemical and physical processes require it. Say steel making. If you do not put a certain amount of carbon into the steel, then you do not get the kind of steel that you need. So in that situation, certain amount of carbon actually needs to be put into it, and that carbon needs to come from somewhere. So there would be many more things that are required where you need to use up fossil fuels, you need to use up coal, you need to use oil, and you need to use gas. And all these contribute to the greenhouse gases that are there in the atmosphere. So there is no conceivable end to the use of certain amount of fossil fuels. That's one. But there is a way to offset that. And that is that if a country, if it consumes a certain amount of carbon in whatever production processes it does, but it offsets that by planting trees that capture the same amount of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, then it means that the country has achieved net zero status. So if it's putting out, say, 10 gigatons of carbon, 1 gigaton of carbon into the atmosphere, and it sucks up 1 gigaton of carbon from the atmosphere by engaging in plantations or capturing it through certain other means, then both these things cancel out each other, and that country has achieved net zero status. So the whole debate and the discussion that is there is that which country is going to achieve net zero status at what point of time in their journey forward. India has said that we are a country that needs to develop, and we have to chart the path that many other developed countries have done, and they've polluted the world enough. So if the developed countries say that they will achieve a net zero status by 2050, we need another 20 years to do that. So our cutoff date is 2070. So net zero is a status when a country sucks out as much carbon as it throws into the atmosphere because of the production processes. Hope that helps.
Okay. I hope, Praveen sir, that answers your question. So if you have anything to ask further, you can just unmute yourself. You would be able to do it. Otherwise, we'll move to next question also, which is from Praveen Singh only. So he's asking, dear sir, please specify briefing regarding conventional and non-conventional method technology to optimum utilization of energy produced by sun.
Okay, so there is nothing in terms of these broad differentiation between conventional technologies and non-conventional technologies is a broader one. So people generally tend to club anything associated with the use of coal, oil, or gas as conventional sources of energy. Non-conventional sources of energy would be the things that are renewables. And that is the way the general classification is. Now, if you talk of solar energy, I talked of the most potent way in which it is being used is using it through photovoltaics. But there are other ways also to use solar energy. So you would have seen these mirrors that reflect the sunlight falling from the sun onto a pot in which somebody has kept some rice to cook. So it's just a single mirror and a pot below that reflects the thing, and that's covered by a lid. So it just heats up, and over 2-3 hours it cooks and the rice gets cooked. So these are conventional rice cookers. If you go to certain institutions, like if you go to IIT Delhi, they have these thermal ways of heating the water that students over there use to take a bath in the winters. And that has got nothing to do with a photovoltaic thing. It is something that is a direct heater which sucks up the energy of the sun, the heat from the sunlight, and uses it to heat water. So these would be multiple ways in which you can tap in the energy of the sun to do a lot of things that you would like to do, which you are currently doing in terms of burning up fuels. There's even talk about having more solar efficient cells and putting them on the rooftops of vehicles that run on roads. And so the vehicle sort of reduces its energy burden by tapping into the energy of the sun, even while it's moving or when it's parked. So there are multiple ways in which things can be done. But I mean, it's not very correct to say these things have also been in existence for quite some time. So I don't think that differentiation between conventional and non-conventional actually makes a lot of sense in the stage in history where we are. Yeah. Thanks, Praveen.
Okay, thank you, Hardeep sir. So we have the next question from Mr. Sahas Sharma. He's asking 80% of global CO2 emissions come from just 57 companies. So most of these are American fossil. Most of these are
Fossil fuel.
based companies. So doesn't it make more sense for them to? Yeah, so most of them, most of these are American fossil fuel based companies. Doesn't it make more sense for them to follow ESG, sustainability, or to switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy?
Well, it definitely makes more sense for them to do that. At some point in time, the Americans were really worried and they were coming out with a lot of information on what is spoiling the Earth system and how to go about it. They've been pioneers, but unfortunately, as of now, they are not interested in taking up the conservation work that they have been doing so well in the past. And therefore, a lot of companies are now, American companies are now moving away from their ESG commitments, which is really unfortunate. And we should do whatever best we can to bring them back on the track that they were on. But yes, you're right. I mean, in terms of the size of the American economy and the way it's structured, I get embarrassed when I think of the president of a country's giving the slogan "Drill, baby, drill," asking companies to drill more oil and throw it into the world to use as a source of energy. That's unfortunate. I share your sentiment, but then we have to be practical and we need to find ways to sort of bring the cart back on track.
I agree with you. Sahas, you asked this question twice. I think it's only the political establishment at the moment in the American companies, which is ensuring that these are not followed, right? So I guess just wait for some more time, things will be in place. However, we continue to do whatever we can. And wherever we are, we should continue to do whatever we can in our capacity rather than get influenced by someone. Okay. Okay. I'll mute. Okay. Fine. Next question, Lelo, please.
Yeah, I think so. Sahas sir has raised his hand also. So, sir, do you want to speak? You can just unmute and you can. Because I could see you have raised your hand.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
But actually, there was a second part to my question, which stated that, like, isn't it unfair if we talk about that? Like, if 80% of the emissions are happening, so shouldn't all the world, we are having COP30 also, and shouldn't all the world put pressure on those companies so that that much large amount of emission is reduced first? Because we as individuals, our efforts won't even matter if we talk about in the long run, right? So wouldn't that make more sense?
I get that. I get the angle, Swash. So there've been we're lucky to be a company of saints and prophets, and so in our country, what they say is that "Achhe ki shuruaat aap karo." You start the good at your end, and then create that climate by your actions that puts pressure on the other. You are very right. You want to put pressure on the Americans, and they are doing a lot of pollution. But how do you do it? If we just sit and speak about it and do nothing about environmental pollution, then we have a very weak voice. So if we want to have a stronger voice in order to pressurize them, we need to do the good ourselves and take that road. That's my opinion. So I think I would suggest that when we Indians talk of making the world better, we should just move this word first out of the equation and say that instead of saying that first you do it and then we'll do it, let's do it the way the government of India is talking. Yes, we will do each and everything that you say. All we need is a bit more time than you, and we expect you to walk the same road at a faster pace. So I think that's a more prudent strategy to approach it. I would still request Murjani ji to sort of.
Actually, this discussion can go on, and we can continue talking about this subject for the next 30-40 minutes or maybe more. Okay, na? So maybe unfair and fair वाली जो चीजें हो जाएंगी, ये फिर बहुत सारी चीजें चली जाएंगी. So let's kind of end it here and go ahead. And if there is something, Sahas, then maybe we can speak to one-on-one on this. I'm open to this discussion.
So next we have it from Miss Preeti Shah. I think so. We had already discussed on this. This is what is the difference between net zero and carbon neutrality? Would we be discussing again on this?
I think,
Preeti?
yeah, I think he explained, I think during his
Yes,
session.
yes.
If it is not understood, then maybe we can attempt this.
Yeah, can you please explain again? It will be good.
Okay.
Ma'am, at a country level, I can be net zero. At a company level, I can try to be carbon neutral. At an organization level, I can reduce my carbon footprint as much as I can, and I can offset that by doing certain things. But if the European Union is handling things at its level, the only way that it can do is to balance out things at the continental level and at the country level. So that would be a short answer to this thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you, sir. So next we have from Devjit Mishra. So I think so. His first question already, I think so, has been answered. When we took the first question here, how the net zero towards water could be achieved. What an organization need to initiate towards the net zero declaration. And his second question is how to procure carbon credits to improve the carbon footprint of an organization.
Okay, so the government of India is setting up a carbon exchange system. It is in the process of creating that. The Bureau of Energy Efficiency is doing that. And one of the problems associated with carbon credits is that how do you verify and validate whether it's not just lip service and there is an actual carbon offset. Well, you have to be sure that if such something is done, there is an actual carbon reduction of the whole thing, or there is some carbon capture happening at site. So the government of India is now getting into this process. If there is a company that has been told by the government to observe a certain threshold and not pollute the atmosphere more than that, then, and if it does that, then it has to buy carbon credits, which can be bought from the market by people who have captured the carbon. But the carbon capture needs to be reported in a consistent way. And that is where the whole set of government rules and certifications is coming into being. And the Bureau of Energy Efficiency is taking the lead in this system. We can expect our country to even have carbon exchanges and very good carbon exchanges in coming days.
Okay. Thank you. I hope Devjit, sir, this answers your question.
Hello,
Next we have,
sir. First question: what the water net zero we need to declare? What are the infrastructure we needed for the water net zero?
Sir, in multiple ways. Number one, if you are using water, you should find ways of returning the water. So if you are engaging in certain amount of water harvesting, if you are doing catchment development to put the water back into the ground, then you're adding water. You'll have to measure that. And if you're doing it in a way that you are offsetting whatever you're using by pumping out, if you're drawing water from the ground and you're pumping in putting in same amount of water through that, you've balanced it out. The other problem associated with water is that you're taking in clean water and you're throwing out dirty water. So if you are handling if you have a good effluent treatment plant and whatever water you throw out into the earth system, that is the soil and the water bodies, if that is clean, then they are taking care of that aspect. So it's a quantitative thing as well as a qualitative thing. Yeah.
okay, thank you. So we'll move on to next. So how will we record carbon footprint data in a casting company?
In a casting company, there's this differentiation called scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. You're a casting company. So scope 1 of your carbon additions would be any stuff and any processes that generate and throw up carbon into the atmosphere, into the soil, or into the water bodies. So whatever fuels you are consuming, whether it's diesel, whether it's anything else, that comes as part of scope 1. Scope 2 of your carbon footprint is all the purchased energy. So if you are buying energy from the state electricity board and that electricity is being generated through thermal power plants, so the electricity actually is associated with a certain amount of carbon. So that gets covered under scope 2. So you will measure the amount for a particular production cycle. You will measure the amount of carbon that you are generating associated with your scope 1 and the carbon that's associated with your scope 2. And then if you want to go further, then you have people who come to your factory to work. So there's employee commute involved. You have people from your company who go and do the marketing and the selling of stuff, and they fly in aeroplanes and they go in taxis and all that. So that needs to be added up. Then you look up your suppliers. How are they contributing to the carbon? If you add up all that scope, that is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, then you have the carbon footprint of your place. Thanks, Saurabh.
Yeah. So thank you, sir. Next is from Mr. Milind Salunke. If the key supplier is not interested to participate for ESG assessment, which parameters needs to be considered in the risk assessment?
Murjani sir, please take it.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was on mute. Yeah. Is it on me?
Yes.
Acha, हाँ, बताइए. Sorry. हाँ.
Yes, so the question is if the key supplier is not interested to participate for ESG assessment, which parameters needs to be considered in the risk assessment?
As I said, there was this question which I'll also relate this to my question which I had raised. So the question was that BRSR was a mandate by SEBI for all organizations, the top 1,001. That's what we had discussed. Now the point is, like for example, there is Tata Motors. Now Tata Motors would be maybe 10,000, 50,000 crores or whatever, just as an entity, the single entity. Now they have their supply base. Now the question is, or maybe I'll also give the answer for this question, is that can Tata Motors alone do ESG scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 on their own? The answer is no, right? The answer is no. So that would mean that they will also have to look into their supply chain. So that means Tata Motors, for that example, would probably reach out to their tier 1 suppliers. And some part of that checklist, maybe if there are 140 questions there, then maybe say 50 questions would also translate to the suppliers. That this is what tier 1 suppliers need to do. Now here, for those tier 1 suppliers, is there an option to say no? As for me, there is no option. You have to do it. So saving energy, is this too much of a cost or too much of an effort? Saving the environment, is that too much of a cost or too much of an effort? See, the only thing is that we have to be first ourselves convinced that we'll have to take these tier 1 suppliers hand in hand and walk along with them. So this is a journey which is not something like plug and play. It will take some time. And this is what our role is, to convince the suppliers, make them understand there could be a very humble beginning, but then there has to be something. I hope whoever asked the question, I didn't get the name, but maybe we can.
Hemant Salunke, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
अरे
thank you, sir.
अजीत वेरारकर ने तो question नहीं पूछा है.
No, he has a couple of more questions, but not this one.
अरे ठीक है. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So we have, what are the benefits to take EcoVadis sustainability assessment?
Yeah. बताइए भाई हरदीप जी.
So the benefit is that you advertise yourself on a standard that other people understand. आपको platinum तगमा मिल गया. You have a platinum certificate from EcoVadis. You are in a position to tell the world you're doing it the way it needs to be done. So it is when it's a scorecard, and the thing is that that scorecard needs to be updated every year. It's not a score that you get once and then you can live with your thing. PT Usha won the gold medal in the Asian Games, and therefore she can live with her for the rest of her life. That needs to be maintained at each year. So if you have an EcoVadis certificate running, you are communicating to the world that you are doing the thing the way it needs to be done because you have a certain rank.
Okay, so next is,
I want,
yes, ma'am, please.
sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sir, EcoVadis is related to like ESG is related to environment, social governance. Then EcoVadis is related to.
EcoVadis is one
श्रेया,
of the frameworks
श्रेया,
that
Yes,
you.
sir.
श्रेया,
Yes,
श्रेया,
sir.
श्रेया, मैं
Good
बताता हूँ,
afternoon,
मैं
sir.
बताता हूँ. एक मिनट, हाँ श्रेया, गुड आफ्टरनून.
Sure.
श्रेया,
Yes,
you
sir.
know, when you are, आप ऐसे समझो that once when you have implemented or done some work on ESG, right? So internationally, you want to tell the world that I have done this A, B, C, and D or whatever, right? You also have to tell, right? Or you have to declare so that you gain the advantages of, you know, probably working with other countries, big customers or whatever. That's the whole purpose, and plus the nationalistic feelings also. Chalo, theek hai. But who will, from where do you get that approval from? IATF karana hai when you have to do IATF, or when you have to do 14,000 or 45,000 or whatever. So you'll go to a certification body and get a certificate which is independently third party accredited without any external intervention. Similarly, when you're doing ESG, EcoVadis is that agency where the certificate or their approval carries some weight.
Approval can be?
Approval can be by going to their web portal, their website, putting in an application. They will ask you a whole lot of set of questions.
Right, sir.
Fill in all of data. Then they will do an assessment and then give you a kind of a certificate, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, whatever, us category, depending on your quality of information, data, and compliances.
Okay.
Okay.
Then it is a part of ESG, like.
Yes.
No,
Like-
it's not a.
Yes.
हाँ,
When we
मतलब
are taking-
after
It's a
you.
framework you use. It's a framework or a method that you use to quantify your ESG.
Okay.
कि हम कितना
Now-
ESG कर रहे हैं.
Then all EcoVadis question is related to environment, social, little
Yes.
bit related to environment,
Yeah.
social governance or legal
Yes.
requirements
Yeah.
related to our company.
EcoVadis is a system for ESG computation and declaration.
Okay, and is it mandatory? Because one of my customers said suggested for EcoVadis, and it is mandatory to register or not? Compulsory or not?
Customer, who's the customer?
It depends on the customer.
Indian customer or?
Indian Motherson Group customer.
हाँ तो फिर करना ही पड़ेगा. You have to do.
We have no option.
No option.
Okay. Okay.
No option.
Thank you, sir.
Do
Thank
it,
you,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the next is, as per the new labor code, how is the social part ensured?
The new labor code is being implemented, and what is happening is that a number of laws that were so many laws, they have been sort of unified in one place into 4 different structures. Number 2, labor was considered a state subject and a central subject. So now under new labor codes, it becomes a more of a central subject. From the company's point of view, this is a easing out of the stringent requirements that existed earlier on. But from a worker's point of view, it may be a different take on it, but there's a definite shift from the old system onto a new system. It will unfold more and become more clear as it gets implemented. Oh, sort of. Next.
Thank you. So next one is our customer is asking for CBAM. So which standard would we go for?
If your customer is asking for a CBAM, you do not actually need to go in for any other standard, but do the computation for CBAM, fill up the sheet that the customer has sent it to you, get it verified, and email it to the customer. There is no requirement for getting involved in any other set of standards. You can do it straight away.
Okay, thank you, sir. So from Praveen sir, it is like EcoVadis is any other rating system for FMCG sector.
See, if you're talking of things across the world, the GRI is what compares to EcoVadis, but it is not a rating system. It's a system of self-declaration of how much you have adhered to the requirements of GRI. There are a number of players who are smaller players who are trying to imitate what EcoVadis has done. And I've also had a conversation with one of them. But my central question to that person was that why would somebody want to adopt your system when there's a well-established EcoVadis system? And I did not get a good answer to what I asked him. So I would say that if you're dealing with customers that are across the boundaries of India, go in for EcoVadis.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So next question is from Ajit Vairakkar, sir. So what is single and double materiality, and is there something called triple materiality?
I certainly am not aware of any triple materiality. The materiality assessments that we do are assessments where you take in what is important for a particular stakeholder in the whole system and what is important for the company, and you plot it according to that. Yes, please, Saurabh.
Yeah. So next is
Can I ask?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, sir. It's Jyoti.
Good afternoon. Yes, Jyoti.
So one of my clients required the ESG reporting, but he's a tier 2 supplier, right? So is it mandatory to fill out the BRSR or register for EcoVadis platform?
No, it is not mandatory. It depends on what your customer wants. What does the customer want?
They suggested for the ESG reporting.
Yeah, but the customer may have also specified in what framework to use for your ESG reporting. If the customer has not specified anything and you can do anything, then you are more freer. But normally customers don't do it that way. They specify where they ask you to use the GRI framework, or they ask you to use a ISO standard, or they ask you to do a LCA or something of that kind. They're more specific. So I think you need to talk to the customer and understand what they want.
Yeah. In the report or in the mail, they asked about the scope 1 and scope 2, and that we did and submitted to them. But for ESG,
if they're specific about scope 1 and scope 2, they are probably referring to the GHG protocol.
Yeah.
So that is another framework which we didn't show in the slides, but that is a simpler thing, and a lot of companies go in for that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So is BRSR need to prepare for 2-tier and 3-tier companies if the customer demands are only GHG is sufficient?
That was my question, Jyoti.
So BRSR is mandatory for the top 1,000 companies in the market based on market capitalization. It is not mandatory for others, but these 1,000 companies will ask their downstream suppliers to do it, because how will they provide the information that needs to be given to the government of India through the BRSR structure? So they will ask downstream companies to do it, and that is the way it's going to work.
Thank you. Is CBAM applicable for all material exported to Europe?
It is applicable for 6 kinds of materials. It is applicable for steel, it's applicable for cement, it's applicable for electricity that gets imported into Europe, it's applicable for fertilizers, it's applicable for 1 or 2 more that I'm missing, and not for all. So there are 6 things that are defined. If you go to the CBAM website, they're listed out there. Yeah, it's applicable for electricity that flows into Europe from other non-European countries. Yeah, that is what I was missing on. Yes.
Okay. So thank you. Like BRSR, is there any other framework easy to implement in manufacturing sector?
The answer to this again is that more than your interest, it would be the requirement of your people associated with you, companies associated with you, and they tend to define what they want. BRSR is not easy. It's quite lengthy and big.
So how will we record carbon footprint data in the real estate company?
In the
real estate company.
In a real estate company. One of the things that you can do is that you can actually do a life cycle assessment of a building. And you can trace all the material that goes into the building, how it was produced, the energy associated with production, with transportation, with mining, and count the life of the building for a certain number of years, and then what it takes to dispose it of. So that is the best course to do it, that you do a LCA study of a building. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm interested. Okay, Kalidas sir definitely will get in touch with you for ESG program. So same is the query with Munindra Singh. So sir, our team will get in touch with you for the training, which is happening next month over a weekend. So thank you for your inquiry. And Mr. Abhay Singh is asking, how is India faring in ESG and GHG reduction program?
Okay, India has taken up certain things that are credible. The National Solar Mission is one such endeavor that India has taken, where it's now becoming one of the leading countries in terms of tapping the energy from the sun and converting it into electricity, and hopefully it's going to walk this path in a strong way. Number 2, India is now coming up with frameworks and systems for implementation of ESG, and the foremost that we have talked of is the BRSR. Number 3, there is increasing awareness to engage in ESG, and not just from a compliance point of view, but also from a brand projection point of view, the thing that Murjani ji was talking of. So I think my opinion is that India is on course. Yes, it needs to walk more, it needs to walk faster.
Okay, thank you, sir. Pallavi is asking, she would like to know more about LCA, also about GHG and associated standards.
Okay, so requesting Pallavi to reach out to me, and we do a lengthy discussion on the sidelines, because it's not possible to do a detailed discussion on LCA within the scope of the webinar that we have. But yes, please reach out to me, Pallavi.
Okay, thank you. So that's all question on the chat. We have 2 more in the chat window, I think so. Q&A tab. No, I think so that's all questions we have. So participants, any of you, please, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself.
Sir, does BRSR also having rating like EcoVadis, like bronze, platinum, and all those?
Any more questions, participants? Okay, so we have one.
About materiality assessment, is there any check sheet is there to fill it out?
Yes. There are methods, and there are check sheets available on the net, and you could also reach out to us, and we would want to help you on that.
Okay, sir. That is related to product scope.
Another is, what are the consequences of biodiversity loss on the business?
Biodiversity loss, if it keeps on the way it is going, will lead to increase of diseases in the world. These diseases will be transferred from the animal kingdom to the human species. Biodiversity loss will mean an imbalance in the ecosystem, and you will have production systems which are less resilient to pests. So these are the two big things that are going to happen because of biodiversity loss, apart from what you will be missing out in terms of the fauna and flora that is available for you to see and engage with. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So one last question, sir. Which sources authenticate to refer factors for GHG for baseline correction? How many years we can go back and take data of emissions?
It depends on the systems that you have in your company. Because you would want to set off a year as a baseline year where you're comfortable that your measurements today and the measurements earlier on are in congruence with each other. So it is a company specific thing. There is no blanket answer to this.
Okay. So,
Yes, sir.
okay, thank you, sir. We'll wind up the session then. Thank you all for your active participation and engagement throughout the webinar. So we hope you find the session informative and valuable. We appreciate the time you took to attend this webinar today. And before we close, I would like to thank Anil sir and Hardeep sir for their expertise and sharing those required inputs with us. And to all participants, if you have any further questions, clarifications required on this topic or whatever we discussed during the webinar, please don't hesitate and reach out to us. You have my contact number over the email, or you can write back to us through an email, and we'll be connecting you as early as possible. So thank you again, and we look forward you to join our further sessions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. See you.
You all. Thank you so much.